Welcome to Super Agents Live. This is the one place where you can come and hear the most successful people in real estate. You'll hear how these super agents built their businesses, how they stay productive, and how they stay motivated. Who am I? My name's Toby Salgado, and I made my first million in real estate. Yeah. And I'm your host for the next 30 minutes while we talk to yet another amazing real estate entrepreneur. Stay tuned.
Let's go! Yeah!
Hey everybody, what's up? Before we get to today's show, I want to tell you, we took most of August off. We've been getting some emails saying, hey, what's happening here? But we took the time off. We still did some recordings, but, I've been heads down working on some longer term projects. Today's guest, I talk with an old friend, Matthew Ferry. Now, Matthew, if you don't know who he is a long-time and very prominent coach on Wall Street. He coaches Fortune 500 CEOs, and he even coaches someone in the royal family. Now, Matthew does not divulge names, which I can very, very much appreciate. I bring Matthew on to talk about his brand of goal setting, which he calls enlightened goal setting. Now, it's a term which he's probably coined, and I suggest you drop any preconceived notions about what you might think it is or whether you think it will work for you, just because it's a term you maybe not heard before. And the reason why Matthew coaches people at such a high level is that successful people gain success because they've mastered the basics, right? Time management, goal setting, delegation, etc. But often it's when we reach all or most of our goals in life that we can become stagnant, not knowing how to break through the next level. Sometimes we hit walls and we can't even envision that there is a next level for us, and we can feel stuck, stagnant. And sometimes even having the outward appearance of massive success, but on the inside feeling like frauds. Now, I can tell you, I've felt like that at many times in my career and life. And most of the times I felt like that it's because money alone has stopped being my primary driver. It stopped being my thing. And I go, man, what am I doing this for? What's next? And it's in those times that I need to stop and find a bigger driver, a higher purpose, something that motivates me, something larger than myself to aim toward. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Matthew Ferry. Here we go. One quick thing before we get to this episode. Look, we had some mic problems, just so you know. We just found out as we were doing editing. So I think what you're going to hear in about 20 minutes of this in the beginning is you might only hear audio coming out of one side. I think this went mono. We had a weird mic problem. So I apologize. Do not let this stop you. This is a great episode.
I am excited to be here. Let's get inspired to set some goals that actually fire us up and get us in action versus make us fret and make us feel like losers.
Right. Well, I mean, so that's funny because a lot of people, when it comes to creating goals and then getting fired up, people create goals that I think sometimes they think they should have as goals, right? I want to net $1 million. Well, all right. Well, what are you willing to sacrifice to do that, right? And once they get into the details of what they must do to reach their goals, there's more often than not large percentages people are not willing to do the work. I'll stop there, and then we can get into some of your bullet points.
Yeah, well, so I'd like to actually turn that entire set of thinking on its ear. So as you know, I have been working with tens of thousands of people over the last, coming up on 30 years now. And my job has been to assist the high conscious, go-getter, badass, make it happen person in achieving and accomplishing their goals. And I used to do that the way that I was taught. And my mentors go all the way back essentially to Napoleon Hill. Napoleon Hill was the man who inspired Earl Nightingale. Earl Nightingale mentored my father, and my father mentored me. So I'm like a fourth generation personal development guy. I should have the goal setting thing figured out by now. This was the thing that I was banging my head up against for years and years and years. And Toby, I'd set goals with people They would figure out everything that they needed to do. They would say, I can do that. They would take the actions. They would, in a lot of cases, achieve the goals. And then they would say, my God, is this it? This is not what I thought it was going to be. Or more common, they would figure out everything that needs to be done. They would discover that they were ready, willing, able, they were inspired, they were motivated, all of that stuff. Then they would get in action on the goals and they would lose their energy and momentum. They would start to feel like they were a loser and that they can't do this and what's wrong with me. And they would spiral into distraction and emergency.
Yes. Yes, I see
It's
that all the time.
And I suspect that in your business, in working with your clients, helping them to accomplish their goals through the process that you teach and provide, it's touch and go. Like sometimes people can do it, and sometimes people can't. What is that?
Yes, what is that? Are you asking me what is that?
Motivation. Yeah, most people think it's motivation, right?
Yes.
It's like
Yeah.
You're not motivated, or you're not prepared, or you're not Well, it turns out that all of that is an expression of your quote unquote consciousness. In other words, what you're capable of seeing and what you are capable of accepting. And that idea led me to this studying of consciousness and a desire for an enlightened state. And people get a little weird about the word enlightenment, but enlightenment really just means that you have a modern outlook. And it turns out, Toby, our outlook is anything but modern. Our outlook is ancient, it's hereditary, it's genetic, it's culturally indoctrinated. And if you want to achieve badass goals you're stoked about, living a life that you are lit up about, you can't allow these old parts of your psychology, your biology, and your consciousness drive the process. And therefore, I have created an entirely new way of setting goals called the enlightened goal setting process.
Okay, before we get, I need some understanding before we get into the process. I'm excited to get into the process,
let's do it, of course.
But I think you're right. So we have an outlook, and our outlook on what our goals maybe should be, our outlook on how to achieve those goals is, you're right, they're inherited, right? They're inherited sometimes from our genes. They're inherited of, what we can or cannot do, or is inherited from our environment. And in a lot of ways, our goals themselves are inherited from a societal point of view, right? A lot of times the goals that we have, we think we should strive for millions of dollars, but maybe you're an artist at heart. So your process,
or you're a tinkerer, or you're a caregiver, or I mean, there's so many different expressions of human. But if you look in our society today, there are expressions that have quote unquote high value, and then there are expressions that don't have high value.
Yes.
And what happens is, just as a matter of survival, we tend to shove ourselves into boxes that are about those high value activities. And my job has been for decades to assist people in basically figuring out, how do I shove myself into that box? And you know what I've figured out? Most people can't.
Wait, let me make sure that I understand you. So some people, right, you mentioned a caregiver or an artist or something like that, maybe that's their true and authentic selves, right? That's truly what they're good at. That's truly maybe what, at a molecular biological level that they should be striving towards. However, right, our society, our culture, our family, our environment says no, that the value of you being a caregiver, let's say, right, or an artist is not very high, right? Because we may not value art. We love art. We appreciate art. But in a lot of ways, if your kid, at 13 years old is just stuck in his room drawing and he's like, I want to be an artist, right? My natural inclination to go, yeah, dude, that's not a great way to make a living, man. Right? Like, don't you understand if you pursue your authentic self, right? I wouldn't say it this way, but you're going to end up living a life that's not really great. So are you saying that you've been tinkering with this stuff, and that's maybe not the right word, but you've been pondering these kind of things.
That's the right word.
Okay, all right.
I experiment. I've run thousands and thousands and thousands of experiments on my clients live with their permission.
So have you found a way to help us break out of our inherited boxes of expression to find our?
You bet.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
Yes. And let's just go back to this idea. The caregiver or the artist, right? We're just using those metaphors per what you were saying. Those two different types of people. It's not like they don't have the opportunity to have a tremendous amount of resources coming their way. But if they take on goal setting in the normal style, what they'll find is that they limit their expression, they limit their ability to bring in resources, they limit their creativity, everything gets limited because it's focused through a survival perspective. So this is where I want to turn our conversation.
Perfect.
If you set goals the normal way, you will find that underneath every single one of those goals is one of four things: have to, need to, must, or should. And all of those are survival imperatives.
Yes.
The problem is, Toby, the goals that we typically are inspired by are not survival at all. And the goals that we typically set are survival oriented. So when you set a goal and you say, I need to accomplish this goal, I need to accomplish this goal so that I can have the money for this or buy the thing for that or blah, 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 all of those things. What you do is you trap yourself in a paradigm that essentially causes you to malfunction because you don't actually need to do any of it. So it's a lie. The goals that we set for ourselves that are in those survival imperatives fundamentally aren't true. The reasons aren't real. And because we set them in that way, we create malfunction. Now, can some people push through? Yes. Have you pushed through? 100% you've pushed through. Do some people have the fortitude and the wherewithal and the
willpower
and the thick skin? Absolutely they do. And for that person, we get to the top of the mountain, and you know what happens? We look around and we're like, really?
Right.
This
Right.
is it?
Right. Well,
Where's my happiness? Where's my peace? Where's my satisfaction? Where's my sense of certainty? Where's my sense of confidence? How come I am at the top of the mountain and I feel like an effing fraud? What?
there's so much, and you just mentioned it, Matthew, but there's so much of, and my life is like this too, right? Like there's so much of like, I'm going to do this, right? Because I have to, or I should, right? Or I must, right? I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. I'm going to solve the survival box, and then later, right? Once I survive this, fix the survival box, right, then later I will do the thing that I want. Then I'm going to create art, right? Then I'm going to do pottery or whatever it might be. And I think the problem for a lot of people is
travel.
Travel's a huge one, right? Yeah, I'll do
Become
this.
a better person,
right? And so we approach life in a sequential way like that, right? We we're taught that we're taught to delay our gratification for travel, delay our gratification towards just doing art, for X, right? The problem I think that a lot of people do is they go, okay, I'm gonna the survival piece. I should do. And then I think people don't know when to call it quits. When do you say, okay, now is the time. I'm going to completely shift gears. And I think that's such a, I don't want to derail where you're going, Matthew, but a lot of times you're like, okay, I'm going to get to 1 million or 2 million or 5 million. You get to that net worth and then you can travel. But the problem is, like, it's such mentally, it's such it's almost impossible once you get on a track for a long time of building a business and then 5 million, you're stuck on that path, right? It takes a lot of willpower or guts or something to go, okay, now I'm going to abandon X to then try to reveal my authentic self. It just doesn't happen. And people then end up miserable.
All the time. So my perfect client is the already successful person who has discovered exactly what you just said. They're already successful, they're already jamming, they're already rocking, whatever that capacity is. I mean, it's not 5 million for everybody. For a lot of people, a couple $100,000 a year is extremely successful. But that person who they've done it, they've climbed, they've achieved, and now they're there, and here's what they're saying. Wait a second. I thought that when I got here, when I had the money, the success, the family, the house, the nice car, we're traveling, we're doing the things that we want to do, I thought that this was going to be the place where I would finally be experiencing the peace, where I would feel like I made it, where I would feel like I'm not a fraud. Look what I did. I actually achieved it. But most people are there and they're like, oh my God, I hope nobody finds out that I actually don't know what I'm doing and that this isn't really it for me.
Right. Yeah.
That right there is the result of traditional goal setting. At 5 freaking years old, I was sitting on Earl Nightingale's lap and he helped me set my first goal. I've been a goal setter my entire life. I know how to do this in such a way that you can accomplish what you want. But here's what I found. I helped thousands and thousands of people accomplish their goals. And then they got there and they were like, oh my God, this isn't it. And this isn't it because what it was designed to do was to survive better, except the goal was never to survive in the first place. It was to thrive. And thriving is an expression of enlightenment. It honors what's actually occurring at this moment. And what's occurring at this moment is that we are no longer in a survival situation. We are now in a situation where we get to do, be, and have the things that we desire, but there's no model for that. And that's my goal. My goal is to put that model into the world. And so just so you know, let's just give a booby prize right now to our listeners. I have created a free 60-page downloadable workbook. And this workbook will walk you through step by step the process of transforming from a survival-based goal-setting process to an enlightened-based goal-setting process. Do you want to just put the link in the notes, or do you want me to say it out loud?
No, say it now, and we'll put it in the link in the notes because I want to look it up right now.
MatthewFerry.com/EGS, enlightened goal setting, EGS-workbook-opt-in. It's not the best podcast URL. MatthewFerry.com/EGS-workbook-opt-in.
Okay, I'm getting an error, but that's fine. We'll put it in the link. We'll figure it out. Let me just.
Yeah, my website is down right at this moment.
Oh, okay.
We're having a little malfunction, but you know what?
That's okay.
That's only at the time of the recording.
Okay.
So Toby, think about it like this. If my goals contain have to, need to, must, or should, I have the wherewithal to accomplish them, they will be accomplished, and then I will not experience that deep in my bones satisfaction that I thought that they would give me. Instead, I will feel incomplete and not there yet. Mm-hmm. And I experienced this for myself. I mean, in my 30s, I was successful by every measure. I had the family. I had the killer house. I had the boat. I had the cars. I was going on trips. I was flying around with my dad on private jets. I was living the rock star life. And I swear to God, I had this hole inside of me. This constant nagging, like, this isn't it. How come I'm not feeling that joy, that satisfaction, that exuberance? How come it's like such a freaking grind to keep it going? And it wasn't until I began to shift from a traditional survival-based goal-setting process to an enlightened goal-setting process that I started to experience that deep, deep satisfaction.
So I want to dig into some of the bullet points on what this process looks like. But as you've run this experiment on thousands and thousands of people, I think a lot of people are on a path, right? They're in this case, all of most of my listeners are people in real estate, in various forms.
Yep.
How often do people or have people gone through this process and they just go, wait a second, man, like the vehicle that I'm using is maybe not the right vehicle at all, right? Maybe I should be completely shift gears of my whole life, right? My goal setting should be to get out of this industry and move into this other industry.
Yeah, XYZ, yeah. Right? Yeah, I'd say maybe 20, 30% of the time.
That's huge, man. That's a
yeah.
massive number that people are just literally
20,
riding the wrong bus.
Yeah. Well, and you. If you want to destroy your life, you can certainly do that. But the enlightened goal setting process actually takes you in a different direction, and it helps you to make a very gentle, enjoyable transformation of the situation. So rather than taking a nuclear bomb and just blowing up your entire life, which will just put you in a deeper state of survival.
Yes, that's right.
What you do is you get into a place where you feel peace, joy, satisfaction, clarity, certainty, instead of the constant FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, right? You get out of the FUD, you get into the certainty, the confidence, and the peace, and then you begin to create your what's next plan. And your what's next plan might be some experiments that you run, not some definitive like, and now I declare that I am moving from here to here. That's crazy. Like, I don't know what I want. I've spent my entire life being a survival monkey.
And again, I think this happens every time we talk. Like, I get so enthralled in terms of what you're saying, right? That we never get to the bullet points. But, I'll tell you this, right? I think that it would be, I don't even know what that feels like. I don't know what it feels like. I'm not sure that I know what it feels like to go through a 24-hour period being full of certainty, being full of confidence, and being full of peace. I imagine, Matthew, that if I could experience 1 week being fully certain, fully confident, fully in peace, I think that it would be unstoppable.
It's absolutely redonkulous what occurs. It is, I can't even describe it. And it's something that we do in my Ignite Mastermind group all the time. And that's the place where you see about 20 to 30% of the people are like, what? What am I doing? Why? If their confidence is so high, their certainty level is so intense that they suddenly, for the first time in their life, have the will to look at themselves in the mirror and say, I'm living a lie, and I'm doing this thing because that's what I think I'm supposed to do, and really I'm trying to get approval and win the support of people I don't care about, and I'm trying to impress people who aren't even looking. What do I really want? And that confidence, that certainty, comes from a quiet mind state, which is an expression of enlightenment. When you have a modern view of what's happening in your world, there's no need for your mind to be racing with all of its insane propositions about what's going to happen and this is going to happen on my to-do list and keeping you up at night and the drunk monkey badgering you. That doesn't need to happen.
So how do we get on this enlightened path?
Let's do it.
All right.
I think that the first thing to do is to play a game called Can I Set Some Enlightened Goals? And let's do like a super basic version with everybody right now. And then I'm going to encourage everybody to go to that URL, download the workbook, and do like a full-blown version. And then in September, I'm going to be doing some workshops to really make sure that people get this. And those will be my gift to whoever downloads the workbook. So check it out. We start by getting to what I call your most cherished experience. And it turns out that your actual objective is to have an experience. So when we look at the $5 million and we just start asking questions about the $5 million, and essentially the question is, what's important about that? And you can just ask that question 10 times. I'm exaggerating with 10 times, but it could be. Typically it's 3 or 4. You could ask that question 10 times about each answer that you give, right? I would like to generate $5 million. What's important about that? Then you give the answer. And then you say, well, what's important about that answer? And then you give the answer to that. And then you say, well, what's important about that answer? And then you give the answer to that. And what you find is that when you go through that process and you're diligent about it, that ultimately you end up at a place where you say something like this. Well, God, my life would just be so much fun. Or you might say, I would feel so inspired by A, B, and C. Or it would give me so much confidence to know that I had that money in the bank. Well, why? Why is the money in the bank giving you confidence? Well, because I would have this backstop, or I knew I couldn't fail. All right. There was like, oh, well, what is that? Well, that's confidence. That's certainty, clarity, joy, love, exuberance, adventure, fun. It's some experiential thing that you're looking for. And when you get clear about what that experience is, then you can actually begin to set goals that create that experience now. And that's really the next step. The next step is, once you know what your most cherished experience is, you then take a whole different set of categories. So, the current category list that people set goals in turns out to be extremely survival-based. But there's a whole new set of categories that I've been working to develop that are more enlightened oriented, and they tend to be more focused on a what I call a high conscious go-getter. And that's a person whose goal is to have peace and joy and flow and certainty and love. That's a distinct kind of person, Toby. And they want to kick ass. So that's who I work with. You want to have an incredibly intense spiritual experience while simultaneously kicking ass in life. And I will tell you, there are people who want to kick ass in life. They don't care about peace and flow and joy. There are people who really want to have peace and flow and joy. They don't care about kicking ass. The person that I have the most fun working with and gets the most the most value out of the work that I do, they want to combine them both together.
I think everything is experiential, even though people don't think of it that way. But I think all of our goals in life are, I want to achieve X because, and it all rolls down to a feeling, right? Maybe you want to have a private jet for the way people look at you, right? That's an experience. It's all experiential. I think the challenge, and we don't have to spend a lot of time on this, Matthew, but I think the challenge is, man, I do this every time with you because I only know how to talk from my experience. But from my experience, it's.
But you know what? That's your listeners love that, and that's why they listen, because they like you and they want to hear what you have to say. So let's do it.
Well, my experience is that in a lot of ways, I needed somehow to give myself permission to do, the stuff that I want to do experiential, like I'll tell you this, I grew up in high school and right as I was graduating, I got into rock climbing. That's all I did, right? That's all I thought about. That's all I did. And, and one of the things that I wanted to do was simple, man. I wanted to spend, I lived about 2 hours from Yosemite. And I was like, I want to spend a whole summer just climbing in Yosemite. But I never did that, dude. I never gave myself permission because I felt like, if I spend one summer here, I'm wasting 3 months of getting ahead, right? And and for me, I somehow needed to get ahead. I needed to reach a certain level in my life where everybody around me, right? I guess knew that I wasn't just a loser if I just was camping for 3 months in Yosemite, right? Like, so for me, like I yearned for those sorts of experiences, and I still do. But I needed, I guess, some outward. It's like getting an A, right? If I get all A's, then nobody's gonna hassle me if I spend 6 months in Europe, because then they're like, oh well,
Boom.
that's
Did you just hear that?
go ahead.
Did you just hear that?
No.
You just did it right there.
Okay.
I needed to get the A's. I needed to succeed.
Right.
I needed to achieve,
Yes.
because then nobody was going to hassle me when I went and spent 6 months in Europe.
Yeah. There you
In
go.
other words, there was a survival motive. I'm going to fortify over here to fend off the haters, to fend off the doubters, to fend off the embarrassment.
Absolutely. How do you break that?
will-
How do you break that in someone? Because those sorts of things run deep, right? Oh, you went and you got a master's in X, but now you're doing that job. You didn't need to do have all that education to do that job. And then I think a lot of people go, God, that guy just blew it, man. He had so much potential, but now he's a teacher. Right? Like, why is this guy? He just got an MBA from Stanford, but now he's a teacher. He could have done so much more. And then you go to parties, and this is maybe just my mind, but then you go to parties, and then people are like, oh, dude, that guy, man, he couldn't hack it, right? So I wanted to conquer the world, to go, yeah, I got it better than you, I got it better than everybody else. I can conquer it now. Right, the true expression of myself, right, climbing in Yosemite or whatever, right. Now I could do that,
Sure.
and all those haters, like, I'm like, okay, now I can literally I can look at all those haters and just go, do what I did. You can't say anything about me. Do what I did, achieve what I've achieved. Then you can talk. Until then, you need to shut up.
I love it. So what you're describing is what every one of us goes through who are natural go-getters. So there are people who are just spiritually oriented, meaning, if you're spiritually oriented, you're very experiential oriented, and you value the experience and the context over like the actions you're taking or the what you're accomplishing. And then there's people like you and I. We're kind of both. We are very committed to creating results and being effective, and simultaneously we want to have an incredible experience and have a contextual framework that we're living inside of that is bringing peace and joy and happiness, certainty, fun, confidence, whatever it is that you want to experience. So that is essentially an enlightened go-getter, a high conscious go-getter. So let's go back to this idea. How do you overcome that? Well, for me, what I like to do is take people through a 4-step process called the Quiet Mind Curriculum. And in that, I talk about it in my book, so people could certainly just get my book, Quiet Mind, Epic Life, and start to go through the process. But it really comes down to this. 1, you have to see that you are biologically directed to look good, fit in, be right, make sure that you hold up the status quo, win favor from people, avoid failure, avoid embarrassment. And those things are run by the drunk monkey in your head. And that's all the stuff you literally just said. I don't know what happens to other people at a party. Let me tell you what happens to me. And you just rattled off the frickin' drunk monkey.
Right.
It's like, it's that guy over there, and he wasted his time, and look at me, and you know what? F you. You try and call me to the carpet. Look at what I've accomplished, and I'm spending 6 months in the, climate, right? That's the drunk monkey defending itself constantly.
Yes.
Looping thoughts. If you can't see the biological directive of the drunk monkey, then you don't break free. You are essentially a genetic meat puppet. You're a puppet rather than the commander of your own ship called this body. Second thing, you've got to be able to identify the hidden motives to survive. And it turns out that there are 10 motivations. Let's call these things evolutionary winners. So over time, human consciousness has evolved So human consciousness, which is, excuse me, something that we're as a society, we're starting to look at like, oh wow, there is this hereditary function called consciousness, and we all have similar consciousness. We believe similar kinds of things, and there's something called evolutionary psychology which has emerged from this. Well, there are 10 hidden motives: greed, grudge, hatred, victim, illogical rules, humble, traitor, pride, greed, resistance, lazy. Those 10 things, if you can't identify them, then they will unconsciously drive your behavior. They will unconsciously drive you to behave in a survival fashion, which will essentially, you'll succeed. Then you won't go and spend 6 months climbing because you're on the train and it's too embarrassing, and you built your life, you structured your life around survival, and now you have kids and family and money and directives and things you have to do and to-do lists and emergencies. You're stuck. And you're stuck because all of your goals were based on these survival motives. Then the real zinger here is to connect with something called enlightened perspectives. And enlightened perspectives are perspectives that assume that all is well in the world. Now just think about that, Toby. It is so hard to consider that all is well in the world. And yet, when we boil everything down, we begin to see that anything that makes something not well is just an opinion that you have. It's a perspective. It's not the truth. And when you relate to the situation like all is not well, or something needs to change in order for me to be well or do well or have a good experience, if something needs to change, then ultimately you're in a survival state and you will never experience deep satisfaction. And then that last component, how do we get there, is something called recontextualization, which is just a skill of putting things through a washing machine such that your conclusion is all is well. Because when you are coming at your life from this state, all is well in the world, even though there's a million, billion, trillion opinions saying that it isn't, that you're able to conclude all of those opinions are just opinions, and nobody's opinion is actually better or worse than anyone else's. What is the opinion that actually empowers me and puts me into a state of peace? Because when I'm at peace, I can be at that party. I can be accomplishing or not accomplishing whatever I want. And I can be doing the things that are experientially aligned for me. And I don't give a rat's ass what anyone is saying. I am completely at peace and unconcerned. No looping thoughts, no nothing. Satisfied, whole, complete, perfect, exactly as I am.
And if you can be at that party and feel whole and complete, I will just say this, right? Because I have moments of feeling that way. But if I'm at a party and I can feel in that moment whole and complete, my experience of the environment, the people around me, is so much more amazing, right? Like I just feel better about everyone and everything. And not only
You're lit.
I'm lit up, man. And not only am I lit up, dude, I have the ability to fire everyone else up around me. Everybody that comes into contact, and it's not with me. This is not about me, but someone, right? If you are fired up, I get fired up when I'm near that kind of energy. The challenge, and I guess maybe I'm lingering on this too long, but you know those 10 things that you were saying, right? Greed, pride, we are driven by these hidden motivations, and most of the time we don't know what's driving us, right? Our consciousness, most people don't step back and go, okay, what is the real thing? Let me think about, consciously what is driving me, because all these things, greed, pride, lust, right? All the 7 deadly sins, they operate within us unconsciously. The how it manifests itself, and I'll tell you how it has how I see it manifested, and how it has manifested itself in my life is the fact that you get to a point, or a person, I get to a point where I feel stuck but I don't know where I'm stuck. I just have the feeling that something is wrong. And so I
Yes.
guess, and I
That's
think
because you're a high conscious person, Toby. This is so important. And this is likely your listener. Only a high conscious person can say, wait a second, something's stuck. Something isn't quite right. The low conscious person just like powers through and just destroys everything. I will kill this thing until it's done. The high conscious person is like, whoa, hold on. Something's off. And when you experience that, what is your typical response?
well, I have a different response today than I did, 3 or 4 years ago. 3 or 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago for me, and I think a lot of people are like this, right? I just revert back to the goals. I go, okay, something's wrong. What did I set? What am I working towards? Right? What is the outcome that I want to achieve?
Motivation.
Just just focus on the outcome and ignore my feelings. Push down the feeling that something is wrong. Right? Because that feeling is not right. Right. And then I work through it in my head. Right. I work through it consciously, go, no, hold on. Right. You've achieved all these things. Toby, you're on the right path, man. You're ahead of everybody else. Just keep charging forward. But the more I charge forward, right, the deeper I get that feeling that something is wrong, that something's not quite complete, but I don't know what part it is to complete, right? I think that's how it manifests itself. And I think, and sometimes I think that's a function of getting older, right? I don't know, and I think there's something to that, right? The midlife crisis of men, at 50. And I thought, I'll tell you, I thought I would never go through a midlife crisis, right? I had all the big houses, I had Ferraris and Porsches in my 30s, right? So I was like, I'm never gonna, I traveled a ton. I was like, I'm never gonna feel that way. But you know what happens, right? 47, I'm like, hold on a second, man, right? I'm feeling these feelings, and I didn't have the tools or the skills to pinpoint or to get myself on the right track.
Totally get it. And one of the things that I'm really committed to is assembling groups of people who are going through that same kind of thing. And just so you know, there are plenty of people going through that in their 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s. I don't know 80s. I haven't had any 80-year-old clients just yet. But we all go through it in our own way and in different variations and at different times. How do you get yourself out of it? Step one, you set enlightened goals that assume that all is well, that there's nowhere to go, there's nothing to do, that anything I accomplish will just be something that I accomplish. It won't create any meaning. It won't create I won't feel satisfied like I have solved something. I will be satisfied because I said it and I did it, or I went through the process,
Yes.
or I created it. But I was focused on my most cherished experience. So step one is you do that. Step two is you begin to focus on the fundamentals of operating inside of an enlightened framework. And when you're operating inside of an enlightened framework, you're pushing yourself to shed the survival-based ideas, which are not valid anymore, and to ascend into enlightened ideas, which are much more in alignment with where we actually are as a species. The modern perspective takes into account that you are so safe that you actually would have troubles even killing yourself. I'm being facetious here, right? I'm exaggerating.
Yes.
But I'm trying to make a point. And the point is that we're not in a threat state, and yet our goals and our objectives operate like we're in a threat state. So you step back and you set goals that supersede, that transcend survival. and focus in on thriving. And here's some of the categories that I suggest people work in.
Well, hold on.
Relationships.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
I want to hear your categories, but I just want to say I think most people, and I think for me, right, and a lot of the people that the people that I mastermind with, in a lot of ways, the goals that I've set are designed to put me in a threatened state, because if I don't artificially imagine, look, I've been successful, I have enough money, right? I don't need to necessarily worry about money, so I have to manufacture threatened states, and
correct.
and really put myself in situations or do deals where I could actually harm my financial net worth and my family and everything else. But I have to put myself, I manufacture that, because if I don't manufacture threat, I'm fearful that I won't move. I'm fearful that
Right.
that if I assume that all is well in the world, that when my alarm goes off at 6 a.m., that I'm like, I don't need to get up, man. And so. I think some of these things are so
I have a
ingrained in
goal.
us.
I have a goal to sleep in every morning until 9 a.m.
Fantastic.
I have a goal to sleep for 10 hours every single day. Because when you know all is well, you can restore yourself now. You don't have to wait until the world changes, or you change your world, or you optimize things in order to be restored, to take care of yourself, to be in a great state. Now, does that mean that I'm accomplishing less? Not even close. In fact, I'm accomplishing more. Why? Because I'm thinking clearly, I'm taking care of myself. I feel really freaking good. And when you feel really freaking good, guess what? You're way more productive. You're way more sexy and attractive to those collaborators and business partners. They're like, I don't know what's going on with this guy, but I just want to be a part of it.
But and that's
what?
Hold on, sir.
Go ahead.
But that is everyone, right? What I mean by that is when I'm in a state of just feeling like all is well in the world, and I'm happy, I'm truly happy, and I might feel that peace for an hour or two, wherever I go. To the grocery store, I'm more apt to talk to the people around me in line. I'm more apt to talk to the checkout counter, and it's such when I am in those moods, somehow everyone around me is in that kind of mood, right? And and then tomorrow I'm like, I wake up in a different state, and I'm like, okay, well, that was yesterday. I was just in a good mood, But I forget, man. I forget that I can create that. I forget that I can create my own happiness, and I can create the happiness of those around me. I forget that I have a giant impact on my whole ecosystem,
and that your goals and your dreams are an expression of where you are and how you're operating as a person. So when you prioritize your most cherished experience, that becomes the number one goal. All of a sudden, your priorities shift, and you start to reduce the priority of the things that are tearing you apart in the spirit of becoming a badass and super successful, and you begin to emphasize those goals that are more restorative and rejuvenative and create the best version of you. And then there's this crazy thing that happens. When you're the best version of you, you don't find yourself going towards those potentially destructive things that put you into a survival state because you want to get motivated.
right?
Instead, you look for those things that are very holistic and symbiotic with the world that you already have, because those things inspire you. So it is motivation, survival, inspiration, enlightened, or thriving.
Everybody thought that we stopped talking. I was waiting for more. Yeah, that's so.
Yeah, we're just contemplating. We're deep in it, man.
I'm pondering.
We're freaking mind melding right now.
No. I mean, yeah, I can't imagine. I can't imagine who wouldn't want to feel that way, right? I can't imagine. And the other thing is, I can't imagine as a parent or as a friend, as a brother, right? I can't imagine me not wanting everyone around me to be in this state. Um,
But that also messes us up
oh,
because it turns out almost no one wants to be in this state. Almost everyone wants safety. They want security. They want to look good. They want to be appreciated. Those are all survival objectives.
hmm,
And what you'll find is that a high conscious go getter like you or like me or like our listener, we're the anomaly.
hmm.
We're the anomaly. The world has only just moved into a place where survival is not the main gig. Like only in the last 100 years.
Maybe
So this is
really in
a
the
new
last
phenomenon.
30, right? Maybe in the last 30, right?
Really?
I mean, nobody, and well, at least here in America, right? Like nobody dies from starvation. Nobody, that doesn't happen in America, right? Like
They do, but it's rare, right? It's not the mainstay.
yeah, right. It's extremely rare to die of starvation because you don't have the ability to get enough nutrients. So I think surviving and living, and maybe that's a problem, and maybe it's too easy to live. Maybe it's too easy to get by in life, and you. I think your mind.
Phenomenal problem.
Yeah,
That's a phenomenal
I
problem.
mean, does your
And what
mind?
it's doing is it's leading people. It's leading the genetic the evolution of consciousness to this kind of conversation. The very fact that we can have this conversation tells you that the conditions are present. If we were in the middle of a war and we were being terrorized by a foe as a country, there's this conversation right here would be absolutely poo-pooed and horrible. But we are not in that situation. We're in a situation where we have the opportunity to live at the height of humanity, and that is in a state of exuberance and joy and peace and flow, and to do it in such a way that we are accomplishing and achieving those things that are interesting and intriguing to us, and doing it in a way that isn't tearing us apart on the inside, hoping that someday when I accomplish the goal that I'll finally be okay.
Once everyone listening to this and they download your workbook, I'll tell you, I'm for sure going to do it, Matthew, but and I encourage everyone to do it. But so I do that, and I do step one, right? I think deeply about my most cherished experience or experiences, and strive towards that. There,
Then I set goals in relationship to that. That's the next step.
okay,
I set my goals, and there's a whole process in the workbook to go through the process. And then you begin to honor and acknowledge all the ways in which you're already experiencing that. In other words, you start to push yourself towards the state of knowing that all is well. Then what happens is the best version of you kicks in. And let's be honest, I don't need to teach you how to make money. I don't need to teach you how to be a good dad. I don't need to teach you how to be a husband. I don't need to teach you how to deal with your body. You're a go-getter. You already learned all those things. What I need to do is open up your energy so that your mental real estate isn't cluttered up with all the BS of the drunk monkey. You need to free up some of that space for creativity and for clarity, so that you can take the things that you've learned and put them into your life in a best practice fashion that isn't destructive to you. That's the goal. Now, I'm like I said, for our listeners, I'm going to have them download the workbook, and they can just do a self-guided version. But I'm also, in September, I'm going to be doing 3 different free workshops where I walk people through the whole process. And then I'm going to probably do a big coach-a-thon where I just take everybody's questions and we just work it through.
That's exciting for me. That's exciting. I hope everybody's excited as much as I am. Yeah, and so I think about my. I'm just trying to mentally walk through this. So I think about my chess experience. I create some goals to support that or surround that or propagate that. And does I guess if I'm clear, I guess here's the problem, right? Here's the problem that everybody has when they set goals. They set some goals, they think it's a good idea, and then they tend to rubber band back, right? They go, oh,
Yeah.
you
You
know,
have to put structure in place,
okay,
right? Structure. I think what you're talking about is where's the structure, Matthew?
do a
How do
little
I
bit.
keep it alive?
Yeah. How do I,
Right? How do I
exactly
keep
right.
how do I keep it going? Well, there are many ways to create structure. And one of the most powerful ways is through community or through accountability or through assembling people around your goals and dreams and goals. And so, of course, you can do that on your own. And then that's what my mastermind's all about. So people could also just join my mastermind. And that's what we do. We literally work on operating from this enlightened perspective and achieving our most cherished experience and therefore achieving the goals that we have set for ourselves. So it's really about assembling then a group of people around you or creating systems, procedures, processes, workflows that support the system. If I'm going to run a marathon, I need to actually get myself into a system where I'm on a regular basis running. But if I leave that to myself, it's not likely going to happen.
Never going to happen. It's never going to happen. I think to reprogram ourselves away from our biological desire to survive or need to survive, right? To reprogram ourselves, especially for somebody like me or you, where we've been so long on a path of setting goals, going out, hitting them, then setting bigger goals in 1, 2, 3. It's hard to get off
Right.
that train, and it's very easy,
Yep.
left to my own devices to revert back to what I know, what is comfortable, what is typical, what is usual, like how I train myself in the beginning. So I think being in a group or surrounding yourself with like-minded people, and truly like-minded people, right? Like, I'm, as I'm sure you are, right, a part of a bunch of different mastermind groups that are all about business, and a lot of those groups I've really stopped going to because I'm at some
You're
level
the top dog.
well, I don't know that
You're the
that's
top
not true.
dog.
That's
It's
not
like,
true. People have private planes that go to these things, right? People, there's guys with $100 million net worths that go to, are part of this one particular group that I'm thinking of. But over time, I'm like, dude, I'm sick of talking about business. Like there's nothing new for me, and maybe there is something new, but I don't see it because just that's not exciting to me anymore. And for me, like the real thing in life, I think that most successful people, I think all really successful people get to a point in life where they're like, this can't be it, right? I mean, I think certainly there's probably some people who are driven towards, they have such a desire or a need to be liked and loved and adulated, right? Like congratulated, that they probably never tire of talking about business. But for me, man, I know there's something more, right?
Yeah, and that's the high conscious part. So again, I'm just going to go back to this idea. Go-getters, we can find those, that's a dime a dozen. High conscious people, we can find those are dime a dozen. Let's just go to some spiritual retreat. Voila, there we have them. But to find that person that is the blend of both high conscious and a go-getter, that's a unique and interesting thing. I believe that is an expression of the times that we're in. And so the objective here is to come together, hang out with each other, be in the same zone with people who are devoted to having an epic experience in life while simultaneously accomplishing and achieving the goals that they've set for themselves. That's my goal. That's what I'm committed to, is essentially I've assembled groups for myself, Toby, because there were no groups.
Right.
Everybody was talking about, hey, and I got my new private jet. So what? I coach people. I'll tell you right now. I coach billionaires. I coach royalty. I coach CEOs of major corporations. I coach business badasses from all over the world. And I'll talk to people. They'll be in their private jet, and they're sad and they're lonely.
Right. Well, hold on. They're sad and lonely.
They're on their way to their chalet for a weekend skiing trip, and they're like, how come I feel like a fraud? Now, they don't say that out loud. They're at your mastermind group, and they're like, "Hey, man, look at me. My schlong is very long and huge, right?" They're walking around bragging and being awesome for everybody. But you give me 5 minutes with that person, and we will start to discover what's really going on underneath the hood. And I will tell you that no amount of success, no amount of accomplishment, no amount of achievement, no amount of money, no amount of accolades will solve those issues. The way that you solve those issues is by taking on an enlightened perspective. And when you take on that enlightened perspective, you come to a place of all is well, and you experience wholeness, completeness. You are fulfilled and satisfied in the moment. Nothing else needs to be accomplished. Your level of power, tenacity, intensity, the clarity of thinking that you have, your ability to move and take action and be free and flexible, experimental, a risk taker, it's ridiculous.
A lot of those people that are, at $50 million or $100 million with private jets, a lot of those people are not whole. They are, if again, spend 5 minutes alone with them.
I coach them. I can tell you with certainty that they're not.
Right. But not everybody listening, that has been able to spend a day or an afternoon or a weekend with some of those people. And, my experience is, there is, number one, a lot of their relationships are awkward. They're weird because like new relationships, they're like, oh man, I don't know. They assume that people have an agenda for wanting to get to know them, and they enter into relationships with like, oh, what is this guy's agenda? Do they just want to go to, get on my jet? And even some of these people are not married because again, they've worked really hard in their life. They've experienced a bunch of success, and then they're like, oh, well, geez, getting married is it's a contract, man. And I'm contractually giving away a bunch of my stuff, so, and I've talked to these guys. I'm like, dude, you got to change that. Cause that's not, you can't go through life not getting close to people because you're scared that they want something from you or that you have to give something or that it's not real and authentic, and I don't know if that's who cares? That's them, and I wish them the best, whatever.
And all you're describing is your awareness of survival consciousness. And that's the way it's been showing up for you, is survival consciousness. In other words, there's a lack of freedom. There's a limitation. There is suspicion. There's a drive for security and safety. There is a lack of open, curious, wonder, wanting to get close to people, interested and curious about people, interested and curious about life in a way that is risky, that is, that expresses joie de vivre. And of course, these people are out experiencing incredible things. They got a lot of money they can throw around. But in the end, that external experience has a really, really short lifespan.
Yeah.
And you can have these incredible states of peace and flow and joy and certainty and confidence. Nothing else required, no external change necessary. And as soon as you don't need to change anything, you have the capability of changing everything.
That's a great line. Last thing, and I'll let you go. I've taken up a lot of your time today, Matthew. But what do you?
I don't know about you. I'm having a lot of fun.
Well, what do you do? Well, then let's spend a few more minutes if you have a couple minutes. But
I do.
What do you do on a daily basis to keep like what does your routine look like in the morning? Like, how do you wake up and remind yourself to stay conscious, right? To stay curious, to stay, how do you not revert into your previous super goal oriented self? And, and the bad thing,
I think it's important to distinguish though, Toby. It's like there's what I did to make the transition, and then there's where I'm at now. So where I'm at now is my mind doesn't talk to me unless I ask it to think about something. I experience incredible states of peace most of the time, not all the time, most of the time. I have an experience of oneness that is not really describable. I don't even know how to describe what I'm experiencing. And so goal setting itself becomes an interesting dynamic for me because it really is experienced as I am a tool for this thing that is coming into being, which is different than most people, which most people think this is my goal because A, B, and C. That is, I don't have that experience anymore. So if I go back to how did I make the transition, I made the transition through community and fellowship. I made it through very deliberate little accountability structures where I would do recontextualization processes. I might take, for example, a relationship that is malfunctioning or I don't feel good about, and then I would work it through the process of discerning how do I get that relationship to a place of all is well. And so it's just like little tiny bites. And the game is to work on the life you already have. So you don't need to, like, the last thing that I like to do is add to-do list items to already busy people. That, to me, that's like a recipe for failure. Instead, what I always ask people to do is, let's look at what you're already doing, and then let's apply these enlightened frameworks to the life you're living. So instead of adding to your life, let's take the life you're living and let's begin to recontextualize it.
Right.
So, like, what's a routine? A routine would be, for example, I would say for our listener, put this in your calendar and have it pop up 3 times a day and do it for a month and see how it changes your perspective. And the thing that I would add is practice total and complete acceptance of all situations, all people, including yourself. Practice total and complete acceptance of all situations, all people, including yourself. Now, that is a lofty, lofty perspective, but it is one that even minute changes of acceptance create vast transformations in your life. What you accept will transform. What you resist will persist.
And maybe grow. What
most of the time.
So and is that the thing you would have people put in their calendar, right? Like
that's just a little
prompt.
That's just a little thing that you might do, right? That's a little game that you might play. But recontextualizing a relationship. So taking on, for example, there are no people out there in the world. Yes, are there people? Yes. But you don't have an experience of those people. You have an experience of yourself. What I know of Toby is inside of me. I don't know what's actually out there. So the moment I can own that I don't know anything about Toby, it then causes me to recontextualize all of the lies that I've told myself about who he is, which in the end are really just who I am. So taking on that idea, for example, like that's something we do in the mastermind, and we might work on that for a month. And all it is just looking at the relationships in your life in a whole new way. Now, when you transform relationships in your life, everything in your life accelerates because it frees up mental capital like nobody's business. It'll blow your mind how much time you spend thinking about the bullshit that you have with other people.
So recontextualizing a relationship, what I know of Matthew is what is just inside of me. And then is the next step for me to then get curious about adding to that?
No. You don't have to. Because the moment you start to admit that it's never them, it's always me, that nobody is out there specifically, that what I have are my perceptual filters, and that everything that I'm seeing through the lie that I'm in a survival dance of some sort. The moment that I come to a place of full realization of that, without doing anything, my behavior changes. I become a more productive, empowered person. I become someone who's more attractive to the people around me. People experience my presence as a gift. It's like you were talking about at the grocery store. Like everyone's delighted and lit up by your energy. they experience your presence as a gift, all of a sudden everything accelerates in your life because now your presence alone is a gift. People want to include you. They want to give you stuff. They want to invite you places. They want you to be a part of things. Your opportunity set expands dramatically.
It's interesting. I need to spend more time thinking about that. But I'll tell you, for me, I don't. Man, I get invited to a lot of events, right? Whether it's a party or a barbecue or business events, and my default answer is no, right? And I try not to lie. I used to lie and make up an excuse that wasn't there. But my challenge is and this is something that's inside of me, right? Like I feel like when I go to a party, like I bring a certain thing to it. And I feel like if I'm attending an event, I need to bring that thing to it. And a lot of times it's just exhausting for me. So I just end up opting out because I'm like, dude, that's just going to deplete my energy. And if I could really internalize some of what you're saying, right? Not only could I enjoy some of those experiences, but I can experience them in a completely different way, right? I can experience a party or barbecue or, an event in a completely different way by just recontextualizing what, even maybe just what I think I should be bringing to the table.
Everything changes, and I'd like you to even consider this idea that when you are in a state of needing nothing, nowhere to go, nothing to do, all is well, in a state of peace, and you get invited to parties, there might be parties that you say yes to, there might be parties you say no to, but when you go to that party, you will be in such a miracle flow that every party or every event or every place or every phone call, every meeting that you have, you suddenly are like, ooh, I wonder what's going to happen in this experience.
Yeah.
So rather than being in a state of trepidation or like trying to figure out what am I going to do, and is it going to be a pain in the ass, and am I going to have to talk to Betty or whatever? Right. Instead of those things, all of a sudden you go into this incredible, like childlike state of exuberance. Like, I wonder what this is going to be all about.
Yeah.
And when you're in that state, it is absolutely bonkers.
Because there's
cool stuff that happens.
Right, exactly. That's what I was going to say. Because there are experiences there to be had that I don't experience because I go in with a certain context, right? I have not recontextualized my place at that party, or even my presence or my behavior. And I'm literally by coming in with a certain sort of predetermined viewpoint, I'm closing myself off to all the other magic that exists in that room.
Exactly right. And I'll say this. It all starts by transforming your goals from traditional goal setting to an enlightened goal setting process. And when you do that, you get clear about your most cherished experience. You start to set goals that are more in alignment and more harmonious with who you are and what you're actually committed to. And then next thing you know, the invitations that you receive and the opportunities that come your way are in alignment with this new perspective. There's no recontextualization necessary.
Yes.
Because who you have become is attracting a different quality of invitation or experience.
Right. You're
really
exactly
cool.
right. You're exactly right. Dude.
The moment you decide that this is the experience I want to have, you're going to find that it just starts creeping into your life. But it starts there. This is why I want everyone to download my workbook immediately and at least get on that path.
Immediately.
And if they want, they can join me for a webinar, and I will take them through as my gift to them. And then if they're excited about that, then maybe they can come and be a part of my mastermind. And then if they're excited about that, then maybe they can come and be at a event, and we'll do some incredible consciousness work, meditation type stuff together. I mean, blah, 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 right? Maybe we're aligned, but it starts with the workbook.
Yeah. Look. Well, I mean, fix that link, Matthew. And you should,
Yeah.
that's like maybe just
It'll be by the time you release this, it'll be working. No problem.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm looking forward to it. Hey, Matthew, I always enjoy. I mean, talking to you is a little bit of a different experience than talking to a lot of people that I talk to, because I'll tell you this, during this conversation for me, like I actually you seem, I feel optimistic. I feel hopeful. Like I have more peace right now than I did 90 minutes ago, because I don't know. I don't want to try to explain why. I don't know why. All I know is like in a lot of ways, what you are teaching and what you're trying to get out in the world, like for me, it's hope, man. It's hopeful because I'm not trapped. I'm not stuck into a pattern that I've always been stuck in, right? There's something better. There's something different. And you may have the key and other people might have the key, but I think when it comes to this sort of thing, right, I think people need to find the right key for them. And I think for me, man, you're on the right track. So I really enjoy talking with you. I will tell you, this is maybe a whole different conversation, but I've been fortunate enough over the years to be able to talk with you offline, and even your wife, your lovely wife, offline. And and I have a quirk about me that sometimes I might go, oh man, I'd like to talk to Matthew about this or get Matthew's viewpoint. But I go, oh, Matthew's too busy. He's coaching royalty and billionaires. He doesn't have the time for my text. You're right. And that's something I need to break. But hey, man, I really appreciate you taking the time out. And I'm going to download the book, and everybody else should.
I really appreciate you having me on the show. I hope that we made a difference for our listener today. And you and I, we're deep in this conversation, and we keep bringing different variations to it. And I hope that our listener goes back and tracks down some of the other conversations we've had, because it just is an expansion of what we've been talking about. So thanks for having me.
I love it, man. All right, I'll talk to you soon, Matt.
All right.
See you, bud. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Let's go. Yeah. For those of you that want to know what we're all about, it's like this, y'all. This is 10% luck, 20% skill, 15%